I'm Serena Appiah from thriftdiving.com.
Hi, I'm Kojo. Hello, and my name is Zohene.
And I'm Kwabena.
Today we are going to be making
A bat cave.
a bat cave. Stick with us because we're going to show you how to do it. So I know you're wondering, what is a bat cave and why is Serena making one? Well, let me tell you, a bat cave is a bat house. It's a wooden structure that hangs on the side of your house or maybe on a pole that actually attracts bats to your yard. And you'd want to do that because they are huge predators of mosquitoes. One bat will eat 6,000 to 8,000 mosquitoes per night. Well, we have a mosquito problem around our house, and if you go outside, you need to be covered from head to toe in mosquito spray. So this is a great way to naturally get rid of mosquitoes, and unfortunately, bats are losing their habitat, so this is good for the ecosystem. So let's jump into this project right now. Let's talk about the materials that you're going to need. You'll need a couple of cedar fencing boards, a 1x2x8 cedar board, a piece of red oak plywood, some dark stain, caulk, don't forget the caulk gun, gutter guard mesh, exterior screws, a staple gun with some staples, some saws for cutting, there's a variety that you could choose from, a drill with some driver and drill bits, and don't forget you'll need rags, sandpaper, mask, gloves, and anything else you'll need to decorate your bat cave. And this was my kind of project. I didn't have to create this on my own. I could go to sciencefaircentral.com and just download the instructions, mark off the materials, and get started. And if you've never done projects with 3 kids, I'm telling you, it is like herding cats. If you don't have all your materials prepped and ready, you have 3 kids going in 3 different directions. And so I made sure that I prepped everything, including sanding down the plywood. This was cut to size at the Home Depot, but you see here that the cedar boards were very rough around the edges. So I took some time, sanded that down so that the kids wouldn't get any splinters, and then was ready to call my oldest son. He was going to be the measurer, and we were going to get these pieces of wood cut to size. This part,
I know it hooks on.
well, it hooks on, but you see how it's like, it's loose? So when you put it on, you always want to pull it tight, because if it's not, it's going to be off. See how it moves there? That's 1/8 of an inch. So you make sure it's tight. Now the back of the bat house will be 15 inches wide and 34 inches long. And I really think this is a great opportunity for kids to apply what they learned in school. They learned measurements, but they never really had to take them. So I think this is a great opportunity for them. And it makes it easier to mark your cut lines. I was the official cutter of the group, so using my circular saw, I cut the piece out at 15 by 34. And then it was time to figure out who was going to sand these pieces of wood down. All right, so when we cut this, who's going to be the sander?
Kojo, but I'll do it.
You want to sand? Okay, well then I'm going to pass it off to you and you can sand it. Oh, Henny was my cute little sander, and he was so excited to learn how to sand, so we took some 150 grit sandpaper, smoothed out those rough edges from the red oak plywood that I had just cut, and then it was time to get his brother involved. Suiting up, huh? Are you going to apply the stain? Are you going to do the stain? You are? Okay, cool. So while Oheni and Kojo finished up smoothing out the plywood, the next step was going to be to cut the 6 pieces of cedar boards, and we were going to use the miter saw to do that, but first we needed to measure them 15 inches each. But before we could measure them, we wanted to cut off the edges so that they were nice 90-degree edges. So we used the miter saw in order to make those quick cuts. And once again, Kwabena could put his measuring skills to use, and we marked them out 15 inches and then used the speed square to make them 90-degree angles. And this was a great opportunity to teach my son how to use a miter saw. Who knows, maybe one day he'll be as passionate about it as me, but if he's not, at least he'll know how to use it. So I did the first couple of cuts, and then I stood by, helped him, and guided him on how to make the cuts, and then we had 6 pieces of 15-inch cedar board for our next step. So Oheni the sander was ready to sand these things smooth with his sandpaper, but we decided to give the orbital sander a try, and it was a little too powerful for him. So he said, nope, I think I'll stick with the sandpaper. So that's what we did. And later on, I did go back and go over it again with the orbital sander, but it worked great to smooth out these rough boards. And the last cut was just to cut the 1x2x8 in half to make the sides. And once we had all the pieces cut, Kojo was ready to stain.
Mommy finished cutting the wood. And now we're gonna be staining the wood black because the bats will like it when it's black because bats like it black.
And he's right about that because the bat house needs to be a dark color so that it maintains a lot of that warmth during the day when the bats are hiding out, waiting for dinner. And Kojo surprised me. I really thought he was going to make a bigger mess with the stain, but surprisingly, he didn't even get it on his clothes. So once it dried, which it dried pretty quickly, we were ready to move on to the next step.
We are ready to add some gutter guards. This is how the little bats are going to climb into the bat cave, and I can't find any of my kids anywhere. 2, I think, went down to the basketball court, and 1 is playing video games. Kids these days, they have no attention span, so I may have to do this myself.
The width of the gutter guard mesh isn't very wide, so you'll need 2 strips of that cut to length, and then you're going to want to cut 2 strips as well for the other boards, which is going to be the front side of the bat cave. When I started putting everything together, I realized that I wanted my roof to be a little sloped. So in order to do that, I needed to go back and make a couple of cuts at 10 degrees. And I needed to do the sides, the roof, and that first board at 10 degrees. And let me show you how I did that. First, I changed the setting on my miter saw from a 90-degree cut to 10 degrees. And then I took the 2 side pieces and trimmed them to the 10 degrees, and it was just perfect for that sloped roof. And I also needed to create a 10% bevel cut on the roof piece. Because I hadn't done it sooner, I really didn't want to cut into the board too much, and so I tried to stay right on the side, and it turned out really nice. It looked good, and it actually fit. And lastly, I still needed to do another 10% bevel cut on the first piece that goes on the bat house. So with these 3 cuts at 10%, it would give us a very slight slope to the roof, which was exactly what we were looking for. And using my tape measure, I marked down about 2 inches, exactly where we want the sides to start and where we want the mesh to be placed. This is the step you want to be very careful in doing, because if you leave any of these edges exposed, the bats could tear their wings on this plastic mesh. So what I would recommend is make sure that you staple down all the parts. Even better, next time if I were to make this, I'd probably use a fiberglass screen, and I would probably try to find another way to tack this to the board instead of staples. I just worry that maybe there could be, a staple that comes loose, or maybe there's an edge of the plastic that could be a little too rough. So you see that I'm trying to just trim it down and make sure that it's stapled in place really, really good. I also forgot that I needed to put a 3/4 inch piece of wood at the bottom piece of the front of the bat cave. This is to prevent creatures and birds and squirrels, things like that, from climbing into the bat cave. Unfortunately, I used the wrong nails, and I nailed it to the table. So just check to make sure you're using the right size nails. I was able to pry it off, use some smaller nails, and thankfully it fit right on the front of the bat cave. No problem, perfect fit. Next, I stapled the mesh to the inside part of the bat cave, but notice that there's a 1/8 inch gap at the bottom. Please remember to keep that ventilation gap because it will overheat in your bat cave, and you don't want that. I used a little bit of caulk in between the boards, hoping to seal out any water that may get in, and then I stapled it into place just like I did the other side. I added a bead of caulk to both sides, clamped it, flipped it over, and then used exterior screws to secure the back to the sides. But be sure to drill pilot holes. It was the end of the night and I started getting a little lazy. You don't want to split your wood, so just be very careful. Do your pilot holes. Next up, we secured the roof to the bat house, and thankfully I found one of my sons, so he was able to help as well. And before securing the front piece of the bat house, you should add caulk to the sides as well. Have pilot holes, of course, and then secure in place. The side ends were a little too long, so I used my jigsaw to cut them flush with the end.
School starts tomorrow, and we have run out of time. It looks pretty good. What do you guys think?
It was good.
It's fantastic.
I love it. All right, let's go eat dinner.
So I cheated just a little bit. When the kids were in school, I used my orbital sander to do a final sanding, and I cut a French cleat for the back. I figured that was going to be the best way to hang this. It's about 12 to 13 pounds, and with bats, it's going to be a little heavy, so I wanted something that was going to be secure. Setting my jigsaw at 45 degrees, I was able to cut a nice secure French cleat along the entire 15-inch back of the bat cave. And when Kojo got home, he was dancing more than helping, but he really did want to help. So I gave him a little bit of glue, let him secure the back, and then I did some pilot holes, used some exterior screws, and we were ready to stain. And after just one coat of stain, it looked great, and we were ready to let it dry, stencil, and hang.
Okay, so we are done with this project, and I think you guys had a pretty good time, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Learned about tools. So if you want to make this project, be sure to go back to Science Fair Central to get all of the details and the materials list. And next, we've actually got to pay someone to hang this thing. It's got to be 12 to 15 feet off the ground, and I don't fit on the ladder. So we will see you next project. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed this project. And me, Ohene, Kwabna, and Kojo will see you next project.
I got stain on my hands.
It's all part of DIY.